Funny how death smells like burnt rubber, but longing smells like you, I muttered, ducking behind a shattered wall. It wasn't exactly the kind of opening line anyone would expect before meeting your former enemy halfway across a war-torn state. Yet there he was, me nightmare, my obsession, standing with a face both familiar and maddeningly changed by months of trench mud and battlefield fire. He wasn't smiling God. He never smiled, but his eyes, those impossibly sharp eyes, softened when they met mine. And that was enough to make my pulse misfire. I had trained my whole life to hate him, to see him as a symbol of everything wrong, everything hostile. And now he was begging me for something no man in his right mind would dream of asking on a battlefield. To mark him, to claim him, to become the father of a child I hadn't yet conceived but somehow already carried in my heart. I crouched lower, feeling the heat of lingering artillery in my bones. My hand itched near my sidearm, yet my other instinct, the one I'd learned to ignore, pulled me toward him. He shifted slightly, noticing my hesitation, his posture tight but desperate. That tiny flicker of vulnerability in him was like a flare shot through the gray clouds of war. "Why now?" I asked, my voice low, carrying over the distant rumble of explosions. "After everything, after the screams, after the nights we thought the other was dead?" His lips parted slightly. He swallowed, and I swear, if a camera had been filming us in this moment, it would have captured the exact millisecond his resolve cracked, replaced with something fragile, almost sacred. "Because I can't bear it anymore," he said, voice cracking. "I've hated myself for what I did to you, but I can't hate what I feel. Not anymore. I need to. I need you to." I wanted to punch him. I wanted to run. I wanted to collapse and let the wind carry me away. Instead, I stayed because my chest was already betraying me. Even as I fought against every instinct drilled into me by training and anger, I felt something warm crawling under my ribs. Something that whispered, maybe this is what we were supposed to be. The battlefield stretched behind us like an unending canvas of chaos. The distant gunfire and smoke-stained horizon made everything feel surreal, almost like we were actors in a play written by fate itself. And maybe we were. I couldn't stop staring at him. His uniform was torn, his knuckles bruised. Yet there was an undeniable elegance in the way he held himself, as if each breath and movement was a careful negotiation between pride and desperation. I remembered the first time I'd encountered him so full of fire, so damn infuriatingly clever, thinking, I will break him before he breaks me. And now here he was, literally on his knees in front of me, asking to be something more than he ever was in my nightmares. "I don't even know if I can trust you," I said, my voice harsh, though my body betrayed me. My hands trembled slightly. "Not after all the blood. Not after everything we've done to each other." He nodded, almost painfully aware of the weight he carried. "I don't expect forgiveness," he admitted. "I only ask a chance. One chance to prove that I'm not the man I was, that I can be yours, and maybe more." I blinked. My mind screamed in disbelief, in rage, in longing all at once. And yet, I wanted to believe him. The wind carried the faint scent of gunpowder and charred earth, mixing with something softer, his cologne, if you could even call it that, the faint hint of his sweat and his life clinging to him. My chest tightened. I wanted to step back, yet every fiber of my being leaned forward. He extended a hand toward me, unsteady, almost trembling. "Please," he whispered. "Let me stay. Let me be yours. Let me be the father of your child. Let me—" I cut him off with a harsh laugh that I didn't feel. "Do you have any idea how insane that sounds? You? Asking to be the father of my child after trying to kill me 3 times. His eyes glimmered with unshed tears. "I know. That's why I'm begging. Because it's the only thing that matters now. Not pride, not war, not revenge. Only us." For a moment, the world narrowed to him and me, the distant shelling reduced to a faint backdrop, a melody barely heard beneath the thrum of our hearts. I felt the pull between us, dangerous, combustible, yet achingly intimate. I lowered my gun, slowly, deliberately. My fingers brushed against the fabric of his uniform, and heat shot through me like lightning. It was forbidden, ridiculous, and utterly impossible, but also necessary. You realize, if I agree, nothing will be easy? I said, voice trembling. Not from fear, but from the surge of something I couldn't name. People will talk, enemies will laugh, and the war will never truly end. He stepped closer, and the scent of him sweat, gunpowder, something uniquely his overwhelmed my senses. Then we'll face it together, he said, almost defiantly, though his voice was soft. I don't care about them. I only care about you, about us, about the child we could create, the life we could build even in the shadow of all this madness. I wanted to scream at him, to push him away, to reject him outright. Instead, my arms betrayed me. I reached for him. My hands shook as they settled on his shoulders, and I realized, with a pang of terrifying clarity, that I didn't want him anywhere else. I didn't want anyone else. He closed the distance, and for the first time our foreheads touched. The battlefield faded around us. The smoke, the fire, the screaming, all irrelevant. It was just him, just me, just the fragile promise of something more than hate. I'm scared, I admitted, voice barely a whisper. So am I, he said. But I've never been more certain of anything in my life. That was the moment everything shifted. For the first time in months, maybe years, we weren't enemies. We were just two men, broken and battered, holding on to each other in the middle of a world determined to tear us apart. And for the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a future where he wasn't just my former enemy, where he wasn't just a shadow haunting my past. A future where he could be the father of my child. The artillery fire paused, almost respectfully, and the wind carried away the last of the smoke. I didn't notice the warmth at my stomach yet, the tiny spark of life growing quietly, innocently, between hope and despair. But he did. I could see it in his eyes, the recognition, the reverence, the overwhelming longing to protect something fragile, something sacred. I'll do it, I whispered, barely daring to speak it. I'll let you. Stay. Be mine. Be his. Relief flooded him, sudden and raw, his lips parting in a breathless, shaky smile. He reached for my hand, gripping it tightly as if letting go would be unthinkable. And in that quiet, impossible moment, amid the chaos and ruin of a world that had tried to kill us both, I felt something undeniable. The beginning of a story we would write together, brick by brick, heartbeat by heartbeat. It wasn't happiness yet. Not fully. The war still raged, and every choice carried danger. But it was the first step toward something that could survive the fire, toward love, toward family, toward the improbable miracle of a life forged from enemies into something far more human, far more intimate, far more ours. The following days were a blur of smoke, blood, and hesitant tenderness. I never imagined that the man who once haunted my nightmares would become the axis around which my fractured world began to spin. And yet, every time I looked at him, standing there with his uniform still torn but eyes softening whenever they caught mine, I felt a strange pull, a gravity I couldn't escape. We were assigned to the same forward post, a bombed-out farmhouse overlooking a field scarred by artillery craters. The silence between our units was uneasy, punctuated by occasional gunfire and the distant thunder of tanks rolling through shattered roads. But in that silence, we found something unexpected. A private world, carved out amidst chaos. He woke early every morning, the first light of dawn catching the gold in his hair and the determination in his gaze. I watched him once, from across the room, as he cleaned his weapon, hands steady, movements precise. He caught my stare and, instead of retreating into that wall of arrogance I remembered, he gave me a small, almost shy smile. A smile that spoke of apology, longing, and a desire to belong to someone who had once considered him mortal enemy. I never imagined we'd end up here, he murmured one morning, lowering his rifle. I thought, after everything, you'd want nothing to do with me. I didn't respond immediately. My throat was tight, my mind screaming in 100 directions. And yet, the sight of him, the way he dared to meet my eyes made every word I might have said seem unnecessary. I nodded instead, letting my gaze linger, letting the tension between us simmer quietly into something tender. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell him sweat and earth and something uniquely his. "I need you to know," he whispered, voice low, almost reverent. "I'm not the man I was. I want to be the man for you, for the child." Child. The word lodged itself in my chest, heavy and impossible. I hadn't told anyone yet. Not the medics, not the fellow soldiers, not even myself until the moment I realized it. But his presence, his plea, made it feel less like a secret and more like a promise waiting to be fulfilled. We trained together, patrolled together, shared rations in quiet corners of the ruinous farmhouse. Every touch, every accidental brush of hands, sent shivers down my spine. Every shared glance, every fleeting smile, cemented something neither of us dared to name. And in the quiet of the nights, when the distant artillery fire softened to a rumble, we talked not about strategies, not about commands, but about ourselves. About our pasts, about regrets, about impossible dreams. One night, the wind howled through the shattered roof, carrying with it the smell of rain and gunpowder. He pressed close to me by the fireplace, warmth radiating from his body into mine. "I've never wanted anything as much as I want this," he confessed, voice shaking. "You, me, and our child." My heart thudded in my chest. I wanted to tell him it was madness, that nothing about this, our closeness, our shared history of violence, made sense. Yet, the raw honesty in his eyes, the vulnerability that had always been hidden beneath layers of arrogance and defiance, made every rational argument crumble. "You realize, everything we do now is risky," I said, trying to sound firm, trying to anchor myself to reality. "People will notice, the officers, the medics. They'll never understand." He tilted his head, that defiant glint returning, tempered by softness. "Let them notice. Let them think what they will. I don't care. I only care about you, and what we can have together." And so we began a dance as fragile as the morning mist, as dangerous as the shellfire around us. Every stolen touch, every quiet confession, every lingering gaze was both rebellion and surrender. He was a storm I didn't know I wanted, and I was the anchor he had longed for. But reality intruded mercilessly. Orders came down for a reconnaissance mission, and he was assigned to my squad. My stomach churned as I considered the possibility of losing him, truly losing him, before we had even begun to define what together might mean. The night before the mission, we found ourselves alone in the farmhouse, the only light coming from a flickering lantern. He leaned against the wall, watching me with that same intensity that had haunted my dreams. "If something happens tomorrow," he began, voice trembling, "I need you to promise me, whatever happens, don't forget that I love you." My throat tightened. The words hung between us like a fragile thread, ready to snap under the weight of everything. I stepped closer, the faintest tremor running through me. "I don't want to lose you," I admitted, barely able to breathe. He closed the distance, pressing his forehead to mine. "Then don't," he whispered, and in that moment, the world outside the war, the chaos, the endless nights of violence ceased to exist. It was just us, just him and me, suspended in a fragile bubble of trust, hope, and undeniable desire. The mission came at dawn. We moved as a unit, navigating the cratered fields and abandoned farmhouses, hearts hammering in unison. Every glance between us was loaded with unspoken messages, every accidental touch sending jolts of adrenaline through my veins. And then it happened in ambush, sudden and brutal. Explosions shook the earth beneath us, bullets ricocheted off walls, and chaos erupted. He was beside me, his hand gripping mine instinctively as we ducked behind a shattered barn wall. I could see fear etched into his features, but also determination, a fierce need to survive and to survive together. "Stay close," I shouted over the din, heart pounding, body tense. "We'll get through this." He nodded, eyes locked on mine, and in that fleeting connection, I realized something profound. Fear alone could not break the bond that had formed between us. The danger, the violence only intensified the clarity of what we felt. We moved as one, instinct and trust guiding our every step. When the firefight subsided, we were battered but alive, leaning against each other for support, breaths ragged, hearts thundering. And in that moment, nothing else mattered. God, you scared me? I whispered, pressing my forehead against his. I thought I'd lost you. You didn't, he said, voice rough, but eyes soft and glistening. And I'm not going anywhere. Not now, not ever. The weeks that followed were a delicate balancing act. We maintained appearances, played the roles expected of us, while nurturing the bond that grew stronger with each shared glance, each quiet moment in the shadows. His presence became my anchor, my solace, my forbidden comfort amidst the madness of war. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the fields in hues of gold and crimson, we found ourselves sitting atop a ridge overlooking the devastation. The wind carried the scent of smoke, earth, and something uniquely our own. He leaned against me, shoulder brushing mine, fingers entwined. Do you ever think about the future? He asked softly. All the time, I admitted, eyes tracing the horizon. But it's hard to imagine anything beyond this war. He pressed closer, resting his head on my shoulder. Then let's imagine it together. You, me, and our child. A life beyond the fire, beyond the pain. Something worth holding on to. The weight of his words settled over me, a mixture of hope, fear, and longing. I realized then that the bond between us was more than desire, it was trust, forgiveness, and a shared dream of something brighter. In the quiet moments, away from the chaos, we began to plan small things, like imagining a home, a garden, laughter filling empty rooms. The impossible began to feel tangible, the unattainable suddenly within reach. He looked at me then, eyes shimmering in the fading light. Promise me, he whispered, that no matter what happens, we'll fight for this. For us. I nodded, heart full, tears threatening to fall. I promise, I said, we'll fight. Together. And as the sun disappeared behind the horizon, leaving the battlefield bathed in twilight, I realized that even amidst the worst horrors of war, our love had found a way to take root, fragile but unyielding, a light that would guide us through the darkness yet to come. Days turned into weeks and weeks blurred into months. The battlefield never truly rested, but somehow, in the midst of explosions and the constant threat of death, we carved out our sanctuary. It was small, almost laughably fragile corner of a ruined farmhouse, a ridge overlooking scorched fields, but it was ours. He had changed in ways I never thought possible. The commanding officer who once embodied cold efficiency and unrelenting cruelty had softened, showing me a vulnerability I had longed to see without knowing it. And I, who had prided myself on detachment and survival, found myself yearning for him, for the stolen moments when we could simply exist together without war pressing down on our shoulders. One evening, the sky painted in bruised purples and deep oranges, he caught me watching him. His uniform was dust-streaked, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms, the evidence of labor and survival etched into every line of his body. He smiled, faint but genuine, and for a heartbeat, I forgot everything else. You're staring, he said, voice teasing, though a tremor betrayed his own nerves. I shook my head, attempting to mask the truth, just taking it all in. You alive here with me? Something I didn't think I'd see. He stepped closer, and I felt the pull again, the gravity of us impossible to resist. I never imagined I'd be here either, he admitted softly. But now that I am, I don't want to be anywhere else. The tension between us was palpable, thickening with every second. My hands itched to reach for him, to trace the scars and lines that the war had etched into his skin. Yet caution lingered, a faint whisper of reason reminding me of the chaos beyond our walls. I've been thinking, I said, voice low, about the child. His eyes widened, a mixture of hope and fear crossing his features. You mean, yes, I interrupted gently. It's real, and I want us to protect it, together, somehow. He stepped closer, bridging the distance between us. His hand brushed mine, hesitant at first, then with growing certainty. Then we will. I don't care what it takes. I'll face whatever comes, as long as I'm with you. The first time he kissed me, it was tentative, almost shy, yet underlined with desperation. The world outside the war, the destruction, the endless struggle disappeared. It was just us, bodies pressed together, hearts pounding in synchrony, breaths mingling in the dim light. The kiss deepened slowly, a blend of relief, longing, and unspoken promises, a physical confession of feelings neither of us had dared to voice fully. From that moment, our closeness became undeniable. Every touch was electric, every glance loaded with meaning. He became my anchor, my confidant, my home in a world determined to destroy everything familiar. And I, in turn, became his. But the war was relentless, indifferent to our fragile happiness. Orders came down for a high-risk mission, one that would take us deep into enemy territory. The knowledge that we might not return, that one misstep could end everything, hung over us like a storm cloud. That night, we sat together under a fractured roof, rain dripping through the cracks, lightning illuminating the ruined walls. He held my hand, fingers intertwined, a lifeline amid uncertainty. "Promise me," he whispered. "Promise me you'll survive, that we'll see this through." I swallowed hard, the weight of his plea anchoring me in a way nothing else could. "I promise," I said, though my heart trembled at the unspoken risks. "And I promise, I won't let go of you, not now, not ever." The mission was brutal. Explosions shattered the landscape, sending clouds of smoke and debris into the air. Enemy forces were everywhere, ambushes waiting at every corner. We moved with precision, instincts honed through months of survival, yet always aware of each other's proximity, each step a silent promise to keep the other safe. He took a bullet to the shoulder during the skirmish. I froze for a heartbeat, disbelief and panic clashing violently. Then instinct took over. I grabbed him, dragged him to cover, and applied pressure to the wound. Blood slicked my hands, warm and frightening, yet his eyes found mine, steady and unwavering. "I'm fine," he said, voice strained but defiant. "Just don't leave me." "Never," I breathed, pressing my forehead against his. "You're not getting rid of me that easily." We held each other in the chaos, the distant gunfire fading into a background hum. Every heartbeat, every ragged breath, was a testament to survival, trust, and the bond that had grown from enemies into something indescribably close. When we returned to our base, battered and exhausted, our connection deepened further. The close calls, the shared vulnerability, made the unspoken understanding between us absolute. We belonged to each other in a way that no orders, no bullets, no battlefield could undo. Days later, in the quiet aftermath, he finally spoke the words I had been longing to hear. "I want to be more than your protector," he said, voice soft, eyes glistening. "I want to be your partner, your family. I want to be the father of our child. Please let me." Tears pricked my eyes, and I reached for him, gripping his hands tightly. "Then you will be. I've wanted it too, more than I realized." And in that moment, amid the ruins of a world torn by war, we allowed ourselves to hope. To imagine a life beyond the destruction, a life where love could survive, grow, and thrive. We moved closer each night, finding solace in each other's arms, whispering dreams and fears alike. Every touch, every kiss, every whispered word was a promise that no matter how dire the world became, we would hold on to each other and onto the fragile life growing within me. He became my shadow, my constant, never leaving my side. And I, in turn, offered him everything I could: trust, vulnerability, and the warmth of a heart learning to forgive and love again. One evening, as the first hints of winter frost settled over the scarred fields, we sat together watching the sun sink below the horizon. His head rested against mine, fingers laced, and for the first time in months, I allowed myself to imagine peace. "I can't believe we're here," I murmured, voice soft. "Alive, Together, after everything. He smiled, that same faint, hesitant smile that had first softened my resolve. I never believed it either. But now, I don't want to be anywhere else. The wind carried the scent of smoke, rain, and earth, but also something uniquely ours. It was a fragile moment, delicate and fleeting, yet powerful beyond words. And as the frost crept over the ground, I felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the weather. "I love you," he whispered, voice trembling but certain. "And I will love you every day, no matter what comes." "I love you too," I replied, pressing my lips to his forehead. "And I will protect you and our child with everything I have." The weeks that followed were marked by quiet preparation. We gathered supplies, found hidden nooks in the ruins for safety, and whispered plans for the life we hoped to build. Every step was measured, cautious, yet filled with the thrill of possibility. And then, one night, under a canopy of stars and the distant hum of a war that refused to sleep, he pressed his forehead to mine, voice barely above a whisper. "We'll make it. Together. Promise. I'll be there for every step, every moment. Always." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of his hand, the steady beat of his heart against mine, and for the first time, truly believed that even in the midst of chaos, our love could endure. The dawn of that morning broke soft and golden over the scarred fields, painting the war-torn landscape in hues that seemed almost impossible to believe. The air smelled faintly of smoke and damp earth, but also of Hopian impossible, fragile hope that clung stubbornly to life like a stubborn weed through cracked stone. He stirred beside me, sunlight catching in his hair, softening the edges of the man who had once been my fiercest enemy. I watched him for a long moment, the rise and fall of his chest, the faint scars that traced his arms and neck, the way his lips twitched in a half-smile even in sleep. I realized then how completely he had become a part of me, how entwined our hearts had grown in the months of shared danger and fragile intimacy. "I've got something for you," he murmured half asleep, voice thick with sleep and emotion. I blinked, lifting my head. "What is it?" He smiled shyly, a small human smile that reached his eyes. "Just me. Here. I'm still here. I didn't run. I didn't falter. I'm yours. And I'm ready. Ready for everything that comes next." I swallowed hard, overwhelmed. My fingers brushed his cheek, tracing the faint stubble and the fine lines that years and war had carved into his face. "I was so afraid," I admitted. "Afraid we wouldn't make it. Afraid I'd lose you." "You won't," he said firmly, lifting my hand to his lips and pressing a tender kiss to my knuckles. "Not now. Not ever. We have each other. And soon, we'll have more than just us." The words hung between us, light and fragile, yet heavier than any artillery shell we had faced. I placed a hand over my stomach, feeling the tiny life that already seemed impossibly real. "It's happening," I whispered. "Our child. We're going to have a family." He froze for a heartbeat, eyes widening, then filled with a mix of awe, fear, and joy. "We really are," he breathed. I'll be there. Promise. Every step of the way." The battlefield beyond our sanctuary still rumbled with distant echoes of war, but for once, it felt irrelevant. The chaos that had defined our lives, that had once made love between us impossible, was now just a backdrop, a shadow we had learned to navigate together. Days passed in a strange rhythm, filled with preparations and quiet intimacy. We gathered what little supplies we could, fortified the ruins we called home, and created small routines that allowed moments of normalcy to seep in. He became the anchor in my life, the hand I held when the world threatened to crumble, the voice that calmed me when fear crept too close. One evening, under a sky dusted with stars, he pulled me close as we sat atop the ridge overlooking the fields. "Do you remember the first day we faced each other?" he asked, a faint laugh escaping his lips. I shivered at the memory. "I remember thinking I'd never forgive you, that you were the enemy incarnate. And now," his head tilted, eyes softening. "Now." I paused, feeling the warmth of his body against mine, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat matching mine. Now I can't imagine life without you. You've become everything I didn't know I needed. He leaned in, pressing his lips to my forehead, lingering in a kiss that carried the weight of months of longing, regret, and hope. And you, he murmured, have become everything I want to protect, always. The days grew colder, winter creeping over the fields, but we found warmth in each other. Every evening, we sat together, planning for the future, imagining a life beyond the ruins, whispering dreams that seemed almost impossible yet tantalizingly close. And then, one quiet night, when the wind had died down and the battlefield seemed almost peaceful, he turned to me, eyes glistening with emotion. I want to be more than your partner. I want to be the father your child deserves. I want to be a family with you. Will you let me? Tears pricked my eyes, my heart swelling with a mixture of love, relief, and awe. I reached for him, gripping his hands tightly. Yes, I whispered. Yes, you will. We'll do this together. You're already a part of this family, and I've never been more certain of anything in my life. The way he smiled, then bright, vulnerable, filled with a mixture of relief and joy, made my chest ache. It was a smile that carried the weight of battles fought, of forgiveness granted, of love realized. It was a smile that promised tomorrow, no matter how uncertain, no matter how far the war still reached. Weeks passed in a gentle rhythm of preparation and closeness. I felt the tiny shifts within me, reminders of the life we had created together, and he never left my side, holding me, whispering reassurances, planning for every eventuality with a careful diligence that melted my heart. One morning, the first snow fell, delicate and soft, dusting the scarred fields in white. We stepped outside, hand in hand, feeling the chill bite through our uniforms, yet finding warmth in the simple contact of each other's fingers. It's beautiful, he murmured, breath visible in the frosty air. Yes, I agreed, pressing my hand to his chest. It's the first peaceful moment we've had in months, and I want to remember it, every second, for us and for our child. He pulled me close, wrapping his arms around me in a hug that spoke of protection, love, and belonging. We'll give them the life we always dreamed of, he promised. No more war, no more fear, just love. The next months were a mixture of hope, anticipation, and gentle routines. The child grew within me, and every milestone, every tiny kick, every shift was shared with him, his hands resting on my stomach, eyes full of awe and reverence. The bond between us, forged in fire and blood, deepened into a love that was tender, patient, and unbreakable. Finally, the day arrived. I went into labor in the small room we had prepared, his presence unwavering beside me, guiding me, holding me, whispering encouragement through each pang of pain. You're doing incredible, he murmured, voice steady despite the worry etched into his features. We're almost there, our family. We're almost complete. And then, after hours that seemed to stretch endlessly, the cries of new life filled the room. Our childa's small, fragile bundle of warmth was placed in my arms, and for the first time, I truly understood the depth of what we had fought for, the strength of our bond, and the miracle of creation amidst destruction. He leaned close, tears streaming down his face, and whispered, "We did it. You, me, our child. We made it." I looked at him, at the man who had once been my enemy, and now was the love of my life, the father of our child, and my home. We did, I agreed, voice choked with emotion. And we always will. Together. The world outside remained uncertain, scarred by war and loss. But in that small room, filled with warmth and the soft cries of new life, there was peace. There was love. There was family. He kissed my forehead, lingering, pressing his cheek to mine, and I felt the weight of every battle, every fear, every heartbreak dissolve into the simplicity of this moment. "I love you," he whispered, "and I promise to love you and our child for the rest of my life." "I love you too," I said, pressing my lips to his, and then to the tiny hand of our child, feeling the rhythm of our new life beat in unison. Outside, the battlefield remained, a reminder of the chaos we had endured. But within these walls, within our arms and hearts, there was sanctuary. There was hope. There was the promise of tomorrow. And so we began our life together, not as enemies, not as soldiers, but as a family bound by love, trust, and the incredible journey from hatred to the deepest intimacy. The war would fade eventually, but the bond between us, forged in fire and proven in tenderness, would endure forever. We held each other that night, wrapped in blankets and warmth, the child between us, and I realized something profound. Love, even in the most impossible circumstances, could flourish, could heal, it could protect, it could create life and hope. And ours had. As I drifted to sleep, I felt his hand on mine, steady and unwavering. "Good night, my love," he whispered. "Good night, my family." And in that simple declaration, I knew with unshakable certainty. No matter what came next, we would face it together, as a family forged in the most unlikely of ways, bound by the deepest, truest love. The sun rose the next morning over scarred fields now dusted in snow, painting everything in hues of gold and white. I watched him hold our child close, laughter spilling softly into the quiet air. And I knew that we had survived not only the war outside but the battles within ourselves. We had found each other. We had forgiven. We had loved. And now we would live. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.